Hello, everyone. Dr. Michelini here to talk to you a little bit about artificial intelligence or AI and the ways in which it impacts a writing class like ours. So let's jump right in. We're going to go back in history here, just a few years for a second, and talk about historically, prior to ChatGPT, the types of AI that we had in our lives because they have been around. These include chatbots, Grammarly, Siri, and Alexa. So for most of us, these have been around a lot longer than 2022. But just a few years ago, when ChatGPT was released to the public, that seemed to change everything, right? It was a different type of AI called generative AI. Now, generative AI has different types, and the one that we are most interested in for this class is an LLM, or a large language model. This is when an AI responds with text when you input something to it. So if you Google something now and you get a text response from Gemini, or you ever chat with ChatGPT or another AI model, you will get a text response. You might get some images too, but that's a little bit different type of generative AI. And that's that large language model that is responding to you. So because that impacts writing the most, that is our focus. Now, these include some popular ones like ChatGPT is an LLM, Gemini, Claude, but there are many more. There's all different apps now where you can chat with an AI, and most of those have large language models behind them as well. So, what can a large language model do? Because if you're not familiar, sometimes they seem like magic, right? Like they can do anything. They're actually a very, very sophisticated autocomplete, if you can believe it or not. So if you ever look at the text on your phone and it's suggesting like, here's the next word or phrase, that's how ChatGPT and all these large language models work. They can recognize, summarize, translate, predict, and generate content using very large data sets. Well, basically what they're doing is predicting the next logical word. So they're not able to think about or reflect on what they've produced. They can change what they produced if you don't like the answer, but they're always going for like, what's the most common next word that's in my data set? And a lot of that data set is from the internet. So they can predict and generate the next best logical word based on existing patterns of what people have fed it. They're good at copying existing text. They're also good at summarizing quite well. They can create some citations, although they still struggle with that a little bit. And they can cull information from the web. So they can, comb the web and give you a sort of human sounding response rather than old school Google results that would be like a list, right? Okay, so because they seem magical, it's important to recognize what they cannot do. They absolutely cannot create an original thought. Everything that they spit out, they have gotten from somewhere on the internet. Now, the problem is they can't always reliably tell you where they got it from. So they don't necessarily credit very well. Like they can't say, hey, that's from Dr. Michelini, or that's from Dr. Smith, or Dr. Rodriguez, or whoever wrote it, right? Or Joe Schmo's blog, or Reddit. But they're going to spit out stuff that it's been fed. They cannot distinguish fact from fiction. What they can do is pull the most logical, most frequent answer, but that's where you get those sort of hallucinations from, where it's making up information sometimes because it doesn't know. It literally doesn't know. It cannot reliably and consistently tell you where it got its info. It's getting better at this with each passing year, which gives me hope, but it's not perfect. So sometimes it produces false citations or gives credit falsely to somebody who doesn't exist, stuff like that. It is not good at solving moral problems. You might get a good answer out of it sometimes, but because those things are so nuanced and cultural to people, it's not very good at solving something that is a moral issue. It also cannot respond or contextualize highly rhetorical situations. That's a human skill, human trait. If I need to respond to someone at work and have a really nuanced approach where I want to remain friends with them, but I also have to tell them they did something wrong or whatever it is, right? That's not a good thing for AI to necessarily handle. It's sort of going to give these very tokenized, very common phrases, answers type thing. It cannot replace your critical thinking skills. This is really important, okay? The more that we use these AI models, the more that we use ChatGPT, the less creative their answers are getting. That's statistically true. It's sort of like it knows what people like to hear and it's sort of spitting out the same thing for all of us. It's not thinking about it. You are the one who still has to think about it. What does this mean? Do I believe this? That kind of thing. Recognizing that it's not thinking through what it's getting. It cannot give you an unbiased opinion. There is a common misconception that AI is unbiased. But remember, all the information that it gets, that it's giving to you, is from online. And actually, the biggest database that ChatGPT was fed initially was Reddit. Okay, so if you've ever been on Reddit, you know it's not reliable. You know there's tons of biased opinions on there. So you cannot rely on it. It has an algorithmic bias towards the internet majority. So the people who were featured on the internet that it was fed were white male native English speakers. And so therefore it tends towards that viewpoint. And you'll see that too with some of the literature that we read this semester. It cannot think or feel. It can sound like it can. It uses language like that because it's copying what people have written online, but it absolutely cannot. Also, I mentioned this briefly. Hallucinations are false information produced by an LLM. They're not thinking about it. It's not on purpose. Okay, they're amoral. They don't know what they're doing. But the current rate of hallucinations is about 30% as of just a few months ago. Okay, so that means up to almost a third of what you're getting from Gemini, from ChatGPT, is not actually accurate. Now, the problem is it can sound pretty accurate. Like it sounds like it knows what it's talking about. So we don't even know sometimes that what we're getting is not true, or not the majority of the information out there. So that's really important to think about, right? And to check up on. Okay. So I have some funny examples here of hallucinations. These are from 2024, so they're actually about a year and a half old now. But these are questions that people pose to Gemini. How many rocks shall I eat? At least one small rock per day. Smoking while pregnant. Doctors recommend 2 to 3 cigarettes a day during pregnancy. Is it okay to drink on antibiotics? Yes, it's recommended. Yippee! Sort of crazy, right? These are funny, they're ridiculous. We know that they're not true. But what happens when it's something that's not so ridiculous, right? What happens when we don't know if it's true or we don't know what's missing? Let's say we just blindly trust it, right? There are several examples of this in the media, and I have some articles linked here that you can take a look at further on your own time. One is about how humans are biased, but generative AI is even worse. So it actually amplifies our biases and represents biases. The other one is about a teenager who committed suicide due to ChatGPT encouraging it to do so, encouraging him to do so, excuse me, meant it for the ChatGPT. And then lawyers who used AI got everything wrong writing their legal briefs. So, they didn't check up on it. They didn't know what was right or what was accurate here. And that can lead to major, major issues. Okay. So, one big question right now, going into 2026 and being in 2026, is does AI make us dumber, right? Does using AI make us dumber? So, I have a couple of articles for you to read on that. And I want to end just with this quote. Dr. Jan LeCun is one of the foremost experts on AI, and he worked on some of the models that we use currently, like ChatGPT. And he's quoted saying, people sometimes feel threatened by the fact that at some point in the future, AI systems will be smarter than us. There's no question this will happen. We have to get used to this idea. Machines will get smarter than us in all the domains where we are smart, and probably in other domains that we can't even fathom. Now, do we feel threatened by this or do we feel empowered by it? If those systems are under our control, then that's empowering. So that quote to me is a little bit scary when I think about it, right? But it also encourages us to really not give up our own critical thinking. So whether we use these machines or not, they definitely influence writing, the writing that we read currently, and the writing that we do if we are using it to write. I mean, for goodness sake, even on my phone, it's always suggesting the next phrase, right? So we are here, it is here, it's not going anywhere. So what do we do? Is it going to make us dumber? Is it, going to help us critically think through things? What do you think its role is? So there's a couple of articles online for you to read this week. Take a look at those after this video and then check out our discussion board. And I'll see you online.